Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over all 28 series that I am in the middle of and deciding on whether or not I am definitely going to continue with them, maybe I'll continue with them, and ones that I will definitely not be finishing. And I will quickly go through the ones that I will be continuing with because I don't think that's the most interesting part of this video. I think the other two categories are much more interesting, and it gives you a chance to definitely push for me to continue a series or maybe even take it out of the pile that I will not be finishing. So let's go ahead and jump right in. And firstly, I want to mention the Cosmere. I'm definitely going to be finishing the Cosmere. That, includes the Stormlight Archive, Mistborn, Elantris, Warbreaker, any of the sequels that Sanderson writes, and I guess even if other people do end up writing inside the Cosmere, I guess his friend Dan Wells, I think is his name, is supposed to be having a Cosmere book, and I have a feeling that other authors may come into the fold to write maybe more one-off and random things in the Cosmere, but for right now, I will definitely be reading anything that happens in the Cosmere. It is one of my favorite series, and I do find that the broader Cosmere is interesting. Stormlight is definitely my favorite of the Cosmere, but I do find interesting all of the connections, and I think some of the things that are going to be coming in the future of the Cosmere are going to be very interesting to get to. The next series that I will definitely be finishing is very new to this list because I just read All the Pretty Horses last week or 2 weeks ago at this point, and that is the Border Trilogy by Cormac McCarthy. I absolutely loved All the Pretty Horses. It was the first book I gave a 5-star rating to in like 9 months, and so I am very much looking forward to continuing with that series. And honestly, even if the second book isn't very good, I'll probably read the third one because if the magic of All the Pretty Horses can be captured again in that trilogy, I definitely want to experience it. Next up is one of my favorite sci-fi series, and that is the Bobbyverse by Dennis E. Taylor. And this is still an ongoing series, so I am actually currently caught up with it. I think the next book should be coming out very soon. And this is not a very hardcore, like philosophy kind of sci-fi. It's a much more fun, lighthearted kind of story with some very interesting scientific elements thrown into there. And I've always had a really good time with this series and looking forward to the next book, hopefully very soon. It was supposed to originally come out in like February or something, and Audible is just taking their time with it, I guess, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Next up is actually the most recent book I just finished, and that is the Empire of the Vampire / Empire of the Damned series. I'm not sure what the actual whole series name is called, but I just finished Empire of the Damned and had a great time with that. Also, I think Jake Kristoff is like halfway done with the third book, so I'm very much eagerly awaiting that and will absolutely be reading it. Speaking of a book we just got word about, the Bloodsworn Saga's final book, The Fury of the Gods, was just announced by John Gwynne, and this is a series that I have had a great time with, and I'm very much looking forward to getting that third book. And switching over to a series that is about to be finished, Janny Wurtz's Wars of Light and Shadow is about to have its last book released here in May, I believe, and I think that means I have 7 more books I need to get through. I've only read the first couple, so it's a huge, sprawling, epic fantasy series that I don't think enough people know about, talk about, or have read. And so if you have not experienced Janny Wurtz yet, I absolutely recommend that you do. It is a treat. Her prose is pretty much second to none. She is definitely up there. If I had to probably stack rank it, she is probably number 1 right now for me. And that is only just one element of her storytelling that I think is fantastic. Just the characters, the world, just everything. It's really a great series. It definitely does take some brain power, at least for me, but I highly recommend it and definitely am looking forward to continuing with that. Now for a book that I'm currently reading is Sunbringer, and I don't know what the series name is called, the first book being Godkiller by Hannah Kanner. I think she is actually done with the third book, and so we should be getting that soon, but Sunbringer just came out like last month, and I'm about halfway through it, and I'm enjoying it so far. Definitely having a little bit of middle book syndrome right now, but I can feel like the pace is about to pick up. But this is a great series, a lot of different things done here. This is definitely a series that focuses or has a focus on highlighting characters who are outside of like the normal, what you see in a character. There's a heavy emphasis on highlighting disabilities and just, people of all different like colors and creeds. And I think that is a very nice element to be thrown in with what is also just a very fascinating world. Now for another sci-fi series that is from an author who's most popular for his Cradle series, Will White. He has the Last Horizon series, and the first 2 books of that series have been fantastic. I'm really enjoying those and have no idea when the third one is coming out or how long the series is supposed to be, but I'm very much looking forward to that. Another epic fantasy series, Malazan. I am right now going to continue with it. I had a mixed experience with Dead House Gates. In the end, I really like it, and the further and further I get away from the book, and the more I look back on it, I do really appreciate what was being done there. But it is a world that, if it becomes too much and I'm just not enjoying myself, I will stop. But right now I am going to be pushing forward and be starting book 3 here in May. And the last series that I will be continuing is the Robert Langdon series. So if you're not familiar with those books, that's like the Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons. I love these books. They are so far outside of what I normally read, but I just have really fond memories of some of the early ones. I've read like Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons in like middle school or something. And every time he releases a new book in this series, I pick it up, and you know, it isn't the best writing and the best plot, best characters, none of that, but it always is asking a question or posing it in a way that I want to know what the answer is, and I want to get to the end of the book. I read those books so fast because I'm just like, well, I need to know. He normally does just enough to really pique my interest and want to know what's going on. Like, what is the big reveal that's going to happen? Is the series kind of like nonsensical and all kinds of wild things that could never happen? Yes, but I'm a fantasy reader, so that doesn't really bother me all that much. Okay, and now getting to what I think is some of the more interesting things, and that is series that I may or may not continue with. You can definitely try to push me one way or the other in the comments down below, but let's go ahead and jump into that. The first one is the Dune series. Now this is a strange one because I really like the first Dune book. I think it's like a top 30 book for me all time, and the only reason I haven't continued with them is at this point, it's been so long since I've read Dune, I feel like I probably should really reread it to get the full experience of Dune Messiah, God Emperor, what is it? Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune. I think those are the ones I would continue with. I wouldn't read all of it. I would at least read those next two and maybe even the next two after that, which I can't remember all of the names of. But I really don't want to reread Dune. I feel like there's so much that I want to read that maybe I can just find a good enough like recap that I can just move into Messiah. But I feel like I'm also going to be doing a disservice to Dune Messiah in the following books if I don't go back and go into it with kind of a fresh perspective off a reread. And I'm just not a fan of reread. So that is kind of the one thing that is stopping me from reading Dune. Another series that I'm not sure I want to continue is the Murderbot series, and this one hurts to put here because so many of those books I had such a great time with, and then the last novella that came out I just did not have a good time with. I thought it was fine. I mean, it was Murderbot, but I just never felt like the series has taken that next step of like progressing the story, progressing the characters, like really exploring the elements that I want out of this series. It really feels like Murderbot has been Murderbot since the first novella, and I would like more from the series, and so that's kind of why I'm on the fence. The only thing is that they're novellas, so they're so quick and easy to read that part of me is like, well, you might as well at least give one more a shot, so I'm kind of on the fence of Murderbot. Next up, I don't know what the series name is, but the first book is Impact Winter, and the second book is Impact Winter Season 2 is what they called it. And the first Impact Winter, I had such a great time with. It was so fun. It was really an audio experience. It's an Audible exclusive, but they really did a great job of the audio elements of the book. It kind of elevated the story itself, but I thought the world and what was going on, it's a vampire story. I thought it was really good and interesting. And then unfortunately, I felt like the second book was such a step down from the first. Awful plot twists, awful character developments, characters just doing things that didn't make sense. Just so much that I don't know what I was supposed to get out of it. And then on top of that, those audio like things that made the first one so good, it was the exact opposite in the second one. There are multiple scenes of like people like kissing, and it is just one of the worst things to listen to while you're listening to an audiobook. It was just awful. I don't know who was directing that thought that this very wet kissing noise was a good thing to add into the book. And unfortunately, I'm so on the fence of it because the first one was so good and the second one was so bad. I'm kind of, I don't know. Well, I'll have to see when the third one comes out. I'm leaning towards no, but part of me kind of wants to see where the story goes, so that's what makes it a little difficult. Next up is the Burning series by Evan Winters. I have only read The Rage of Dragons, and I had a good time with it. It definitely felt kind of anime-esque, where you have a character who's so focused on just like one thing. A lot of times it's like a revenge thing or getting stronger, and that is the main focus of an anime protagonist or in manga. And that's kind of what I felt from The Rage of Dragons. So Fires of Vengeance is out, and I don't own it yet, and I don't know if I want to continue. I think there are some very interesting elements, especially from the magic in this world, but it's also been like 7 years since book 2 came out, and I don't think there's any word on book 3, which makes me a little hesitant to continue, because if, say, book 3 comes out in 2 years from now, I'm probably going to feel like I need to reread things again, and then we're back at the reread problem, where I don't like to reread things, where at least at this point, I remember enough of The Rage of Dragons to go into book 2, but I think if then I had another gap between book 2 and book 3, that I'd probably forget a whole lot, and I don't want to reread. So this is another book. If you think book 2 of The Burning is really worth it, let me know, because it's one I'm super on the fence about. Next up is a series that has gotten very popular recently, and that is the Bound and Broken series by Ryan Cahill. I have only read the prequel novella, The Fall, and I don't know if that was a great representation of what the whole series is going to be, but at the time, it never really pushed me to go on to book one. There were some things that I thought were interesting, and obviously fantasy with dragons and big epic, I like all of that stuff, and I see so many people talk so positively about it, but for whatever reason, I just haven't been drawn to continue with it, so it's just kind of one of those maybe things. It's maybe one that when it's finally finished and everybody can say, yeah, it's great from book, I think most people say book one is just fine, and then book two and the rest are really great. And if that continues, then maybe it's something I'll continue with. But right now, it's not something that feels really pressing. And also, it's another long epic fantasy series, and I'm in the middle of 28 of them right now. So I don't know if it's something I really want to push forward into, at least until it's done. Maybe that at that point, it'll give me that itch to continue. Next up is Gunmetal Gods, and this is a book that I didn't like. Actually, I didn't really have a good time with it. I had a lot of issues with it, but for whatever reason, I thought the world and the magic was fascinating enough that maybe I would want to continue. Now, this is one of those books where I hear a lot of people talk negatively about it, or speak positively of it, and then I had such a negative reaction to it. So when I see people say that they like book two just as much as book one, it makes me think I won't like book two because I didn't like book one. So I'm still somewhat fascinated by the world, and I'm also fascinated because it's a different mythology than I'm used to. I really liked that aspect of book one, but unfortunately, a lot of the other things just didn't work for me. I felt like so many of the characters were basically the same, and yeah, I didn't enjoy large parts of that book. And so, I don't know, it's one of those funny ones where it was bad, but I'm hoping it gets good, and so I want to continue. And then my last maybe series is the Lawful Time series by Daniel Green. Yes, the booktuber Daniel Green. I love to support the booktubers and people I watch here on BookTube. Like if a booktuber I watch and enjoy has a book out or something, odds are I'm going to buy it, even if I don't plan on reading it, just because I like to support indie authors, or if they're published, but I like to support the people who I like to watch. And so I enjoyed his two books. I thought they were fine. I don't think they were anything that special, but it's been a really long time since that second book came out, and who knows if he's even going to continue the series. I know he has his other book, Neon Ghost, which I'm going to read at some point, but I don't know. It almost seems like he's not super committed to the series, or maybe he wants to go back and refine some things and change some things, which is fine, but it makes me question on if I'm going to need to go back and reread stuff that's 30% the same, 30% change, but 70% the same. Am I going to want to go back and reread just to get those changes? I'll be interested to see what happens with that series. And now next up is 4 series I will not be continuing. And first up, we have the Godfather series. And I'm sure most people think of this one as a movie more than a book, but also a standalone. But there are 3 other Godfather books. One was released in 2012, so not even that long. I mean, not that long ago, but I just never have. I have decided that the story wrapped up at a point that I do not care what happens. I'm good with just cutting it off there, and I don't need to continue. I think technically the second book is maybe a prequel or something almost, and honestly, I just don't care. I think The Godfather is a fantastic book, and you should read it even if you have seen the movies. I think it's really well done, and is worth the read, but yeah, I just don't have any desire to continue with the series. Next up is the Robinson Crusoe series. So I actually really love Robinson Crusoe. It's, a top 20-ish book for me all time, which is funny because I think it's not a book I would recommend to most people. I think a lot of people would find it extremely dry, and obviously there are definitely some very dated elements to it. But man, when I read that book, it just had that sense of adventure that I like from a book. It reminded me somewhat of a Tom Sawyer, but completely different. I don't know why I relate those 2 books together, but I do. But I feel like that book just ended fine, and the only reason there's sequels is because at the time the author needed more money, and so that's the only reason those exist, and so I just have no desire to continue there. Next up is a highly thought of sci-fi series, and that is the Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons. So I have read the first 2 Hyperion books. What is it? Hyperion and the Fall of Hyperion or something like that, and I really enjoyed the first book, and I had an okay time with the second book, but after the second book, I just had zero desire to continue with the next 2. I don't think they're even direct sequels. I think they're kind of their own thing, but with similar through lines, but I just no desire to continue. I just don't think they're for me. I think they just kind of got to a spot, a place that I don't want to explore. Next up is another very popular fantasy series, though I think it is more popular in other spaces than books, and that is the Witcher series. I don't think I'm going to continue with this. I really thought about doing it this year, and I only have like 3 or 4 books left. But I just felt like every book I was reading was getting worse, and I just cared less and less about it. And now it's been 4-ish years since I read my most recent one from the series, and I just have no desire to like keep going and continuing, because I think it's just going to go downhill. I don't know if it's a translation issue, but I also think that the best way to experience this series is probably through the video games. I don't think the books are like the medium for this book, unfortunately. So I know there are huge Witcher fans out there who, are going to probably tell me to continue with it, but I don't think it's going to happen. Next up is the Jurassic Park series. I read the first Jurassic Park, liked it, thought it was fine. I think I liked the movie more. Not that the book is bad, I don't know, I think I like the movie more. It's a little bit more of a good time, I think, than the book. And there's like, 2 or 3 other ones in that series, and I just don't care to. I think the only reason those books exist is because they were going to make more movies, and so that he wrote more books, and I just don't care to continue. Next up is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I didn't even like the first Hitchhiker's book, and I think most Hitchhiker's fans are pretty unanimous that the first one is the best one, and they all kind of get worse as you continue throughout the series. And so if I didn't like the first one, that kind of humor, just nothing about it was funny to me. I just don't connect with it, didn't think it was funny. I know so many people find that book ironic and hilarious, and like, oh, he's getting in they're making it intergalactic. His house is getting demolished for a highway, but then Earth is getting demolished for an intergalactic highway. Like, that's not funny. If you think that's funny, I'm so happy for you. But to me, that's just, I don't know. Nothing about it's humorous or what. It was posted. They talk about, oh yeah, if you go to this super obscure place, there's a flyer up that says that this is going to happen. You've been notified. It's like, nothing about that. I don't know. If you think that's funny, I'm so happy for you. I'm glad you find that funny. I do not. Nothing about that. Nothing about that book was funny. I had a horrible time with that book. Nothing about it clicked with me, and I definitely will not be continuing this series. The next series is, I actually don't know the name, but the first book is Destination Void, and this is another one I just had a horrible time with, did not enjoy it. It's supposed to be one of those sci-fi series that, is thought-provoking, and I saw people speaking highly of it and just didn't enjoy it. And speaking of series that are very highly spoken of, I think Benti is the series, has won multiple awards, and it's a Nigerian-inspired story, and unfortunately I read it and I had a miserable time with this book. Did not enjoy it, didn't really care about anything that was going on whatsoever, and so that is definitely another series I will not be continuing. And that happens to be the end of this list. Let me know if there are some series that are in that maybe or definitely not category that you think I should reconsider. The odds are I will not reconsider if I had them in the I'm not going to finish category, but you never know. If you put a compelling enough argument, I might consider it. Let me know if you have read any of these series, what your thoughts are, if you would or wouldn't have continued them, all that stuff down in the comments below. And as always, have a good one.